Here we go. Okay, we're ready to get started. Today, we're actually going to begin the actual text of the Rambam's introduction to Moreh Nevukhim. So up until now, we were doing the introduction to the introduction. Today, we're actually going to begin the introduction to Moreh Nevukhim. The Rambam begins by telling us for whom he wrote his Sefer. Now, if you recall, we mentioned that one of the justifications that the Rambam has for revealing some of the things that the Mishnah said are meant to be hidden, Ma'aseh Bereshis and Ma'aseh Merkava, is that he's not revealing it to the whole world. He's only writing it for a select few people. And so this is part of his apology, as it were, in explaining this, is to say, I've written this for you, my student. And the student's name is Yosef, and this is how it starts. Now, for whatever reason, the photocopies that you have from the Pines edition, the first page is on the right side, second page is on the left side. I hope that doesn't throw you off. My honored pupil, so the Pines calls this the Epistle Dedicatory. So basically, he's explaining to whom he's dedicating this work. My honored pupil, Rabbi Yosef, may the rock guard you, son of Rabbi Yehuda, may his repose be in paradise, or Olav HaShalom. When you came to me, having conceived the intention of journeying from the country farthest away in order to read texts under my guidance. So already we know that Yosef is a student of the Rambam, and he came from a faraway land all the way to Egypt in order to study Torah, and not only Torah, but also to study philosophy under the Rambam. I had a high opinion of you because of your strong desire for inquiry and because of what I had observed in your poems of your powerful longing for speculative matters involving philosophy. This was the case since your letters and compositions in rhymed prose came to me from Alexandria before your grasp was put to the test. So already, even before I met you and I had a chance to schmooze with you, I discovered that you were a very clever fellow, very deep. I said, however, perhaps his longing is stronger than his grasp. So I see you're a romantic and you are in love with the idea of studying deep philosophical matters, but maybe your longing is greater than your ability. So when thereupon you read under my guidance texts dealing with the science of astronomy, and prior to that texts dealing with mathematics, which is necessary as an introduction to astronomy, my joy in you increased because of the excellence of your mind and the quickness of your grasp. I saw that your longing for mathematics was great, and hence I let you train yourself in that science, knowing where you would end. Can you imagine anyone going to a Rebbe today to learn science and mathematics? When thereupon you read under my guidance texts dealing with the art of logic, which is the next step, first you need to know math, because logic, certainly medieval logic, is really predicated on mathematical principles. Okay? So my hopes fastened upon you, and I saw that you are one worthy to have the secrets of the prophetic books revealed to you, so that you would consider in them that which perfect men ought to consider. So the secrets of the prophetic books is the next step. Math, then astronomy, then logic, and then opening up the secrets of the Nevukhim. That's the sequence. Wow. Right? A different way for us to learn Navi than we normally would think to learn. But he's talking about Ma'aseh Bereshit and Ma'aseh Merkava, right? Thereupon I began to let you see certain flashes and to give you certain indications. I haven't opened up the whole world for you yet. I'm just giving you little glimpses. Then I saw that you demanded of me additional knowledge and asked me to make clear to you certain things pertaining to divine matters, to inform you to inform you of the intentions of the mutakalimun in this respect. Okay, so first the words of the Nevukhim, then matters of the divine, trying to understand certain aspects of the Ribono Shel Olam. And then what you asked me is you wanted to understand the words of the mutakalimun. Let's explain what that term means. There is a type of logical discourse in the world where the Rambam lives called kalam. Kalam simply means the word in Arabic, or speaking, and it is a certain discipline of logic that was employed by Muslim philosophers of the time who engaged in what is known as apologetics. What do we mean by that? To try and reconcile Islam with Greek philosophy. As we'll see throughout the Moreh Nevukhim, the Rambam is particularly critical of those who engage in kalam. And what do we call those wise men who engage in the discipline of kalam? The mutakalimun. That's an Arabic term for those who engage in kalam, the kalamists. Okay? Why is the Rambam critical of them? Because you never try to create apologetic arguments to reconcile religion with philosophy. It either fits or it doesn't fit. The Rambam, by the way, was also somewhat, not sharply, but somewhat critical of Reb Saadia Gaon, because he perceived that Reb Saadia Gaon, in his Sefer Emunot V'Deot, which was written many, many years before the Moreh Nevukhim, also engaged in a kalamic type of argumentation to reconcile Jewish principles with philosophical principles. Here's the irony. What is the Moreh Nevukhim all about? It's to try and show us that there's very little space between philosophy and the words of the Torah. But the Rambam does not feel that he is engaged in kalam, because he feels that the kalamists have to bend. They bend philosophy and they bend scripture. But the Rambam says, I will do neither. I am staying true to the truth. And therefore, you asked me, what's pshat with the mutakalimun? Are they kosher or are they not kosher? The type of argumentation that they engage in. And to let you know whether their methods were demonstrative, and if not, to what art they belonged. In other words, are their arguments trustworthy, or is it merely rhetoric that is used in order to convince the listener and not really true arguments? As I also saw, you had already acquired some smattering of this subject from people other than myself. And of course, what happens when you go to many teachers? The Gemara itself talks about this, about a person who goes to multiple different rebbeim and hears different types of approaches. What happens is that one argument is that this enriches the person because he hears from multiple different sources. But the other argument is that this is problematic because what happens? You become perplexed because you hear different ways of presenting ideas, different approaches, different views, and it makes you perplexed, as stupefaction had come over you. Your noble soul demanded of you to find out acceptable words. Yet I did not cease dissuading you from this and enjoining upon you to approach matters in an orderly manner. Because basically he's saying that when you came to me, you were a cholent of different stuff. And I told you, take it step by step, go methodically, go in an orderly fashion. My purpose in this was that the truth should be established in your mind according to the proper methods, and that certainty should not come to you by accident. Whenever during your association with me, a biblical verse or some text of the sages was mentioned in which there was a pointer to some strange notion, I did not refrain from explaining it to you. We didn't just gloss over something, we went through everything methodically. Then when God decreed our separation and you betook yourself elsewhere, in other words, you had to leave where we were studying, these meetings aroused in me a resolution that had slackened. Your absence moved me to compose this treatise, which I have composed for you and for those like you, however few they are. So we see a couple of things in this statement. Number one, that the Rambam really had never set out to write the Moreh Nevukhim independently. His inspiration for writing the Moreh Nevukhim was having a student who was asking questions and was prodding the Rambam. And this is why Rabbi Chanina says the famous statement of the Gemara, Uni Talmidai Yoter Mikulam. I learn the most from my students because it is through their questions, through their prodding, that I become stimulated and am able to find within myself the creativity of answering those questions. And the Rambam says, when you left, like I had this faucet that was turned on, pouring out these very, very deep ideas to my student, and when you left, there was no one to pour it out to. The Gemara says, more than the calf wishes to suckle, the cow wishes to give its milk. And this is sort of what the Rambam is alluding to. And therefore, I felt, let me write these things, these ideas down, so that should there happen by other students that are like you, even though they'll be very few in number. Remember, this is the Rambam's apology as to what justification he has to write these ideas down, despite the Mishnah's exhortation that you may not teach it to the masses. He says there's only going to be a few people who are interested in this stuff, and therefore I have a justification. And notice that he calls this a treatise, which is a ma'amar. It's not even a book. Leo Strauss points this out. It's not even a book. It's just an essay. And the reason for the Rambam writing that is that, again, he wants to remove any sense of permanence or importance to this work so that people should not interpret it as something that will be for the ages, for the public consumption. I have set it down in dispersed chapters. And what does he mean by that? Again, like we saw from Strauss last week, I have not organized this book in a way that anyone can just pick it off the shelf and make sense of it. I've created a sense of dispersion within the ideas so that only people who already have the requisite knowledge to process this information will be able to acquire more. All of them that are written down will reach you where you are, one after the other. Be in good health. And essentially what the Rambam writes is that my hope is that eventually these words will get to you as well, as I write them chapter by chapter. I guess this was sort of like a correspondence that he was sending to Yosef. And I wish you well. Okay, let us turn the page. I don't know. I haven't studied the history carefully and researched it. All we know, I don't think we know more than the fact that he was a student who may have become involved with Karaism at some point, got involved with philosophy, and I don't know more. You're welcome to research it. If you discover anything, let us know. Okay, the Rambam then starts the formal introduction to the first part of the book at this point. And he starts off with a series of psukim. Now, I just want to let you know that, the introduction sort of is causing me to think how we should study the introduction. The first page of the introduction we're going to study today, but I don't know whether we're going to go kiseder, whether we're going to go through every single word of the introduction, because, and we'll have to see how we get through the various essays of the Moreh Nevukhim itself. I may just want to extract certain passages from each essay and expand upon them, only because I think we might find that the language is a little bit difficult, but we'll try our best. The Rambam starts off quoting 3 psukim, the first one from Tehillim and the second 2 from Proverbs, in which he calls upon Hashem to give him wise counsel, and listen, and I also call out to you, O men, and incline your ear, hear the words of the wise, apply thy heart unto my knowledge. What's very interesting is that some of the Meforshim point out is that the Rambam writes esoterically, which means that he writes on multiple levels of understanding. His surface language teaches us one area or one scope of knowledge, and if you go even deeper into his language, which we really can't do, it's very difficult because we are not studying the original Arabic, you'll find even greater depth. And that's what he means by this pasuk in Mishlei, chapter 8, verse 4. Unto you, O men, I call, and my voice is to the sons of men. 2 different levels. If you're a man, like you're an ish who really, really understands things, you'll hear my voice in one way. If you're less than that, you'll just hear my voice, but you won't hear the inner depth of what I'm going to say. So if you're a sons of men, you'll get something out of it, but you won't get the full depth out of it. Okay, so the first purpose of this treatise is to explain the meanings of certain terms occurring in books of prophecy. That's a very important sentence. Essentially what the Rambam is telling us is that the first section of the Moreh Nevukhim is to really explain biblical language and terminology. And it's important to know this, that the Rambam places tremendous importance on our careful analysis of language, because the greatest mistake that a scholar can make is to misinterpret the language that is presented to him or her. And the Rambam actually has a long exposition on this idea of the misinterpretation of language in his introduction to the 10th chapter of Tractate Sanhedrin, in his Perush HaMishnayos, in his Mishnah commentary, where he says that the reason why so many people get Judaism wrong, they get the Torah wrong, is because they're reading the texts, and they may be well versed in all of the texts, both biblical and rabbinical, but they don't understand when something is meant to be taken metaphorically and when it's meant to be taken literally, when there's a term that is borrowed and is only meant as a borrowed term and is not meant to be taken literally. He says the greatest folly that people make is when they read, let's say, especially when it comes to Agadata, in the words of our Chazal, the Agadic portions of our sages, and they take the words literally, and it makes the rabbis sound like they're foolish. He says the same thing can be done in biblical texts as well, but that if you take everything literally, you're going to end up with a very distorted view of really what Torah and Tanakh is all about. So the first project of the Moreh Nevukhim is to break down certain terminology that's found in Tanakh and to give you the true inner meaning of those terms.
Rabbi, don't we have a greater proclivity to make that mistake when we're studying Tanakh in translation rather than in the original? Absolutely, because when you know the original Hebrew, you know there's different nuances and multiple meanings in certain words. I'll give you an example, because he actually breaks down different types of non-literal terminology. He breaks it down into three categories. Some of these terms are equivocal. And what do we mean by equivocal? So it's the language that the Hebrew uses is mishutaf or mishtatef, which means that it has two meanings. There are many words in Hebrew that have multiple meanings, right? Anyone give me an example? Malach could have multiple meanings. Messenger, angel, good. Let's say the word chai. The word chai. What does it mean? Alive. It means a living creature. And it could mean raw. Let's say a vegetable is chai. Right? What does it mean? It doesn't mean, if you say gezer chai, it doesn't mean a living carrot. It means a raw carrot, right? So you got to know when you're the word chai, what it means in the context, okay? Hence, the ignorant attribute to them only one or some of the meanings in which the term in question is used. Others are derivative terms. The term in Hebrew is mush'alim, which means like mush'al. It means it's a borrowed term, which means that it's really a word that does not apply to the issue in question, but it's a term that we use from another source to sort of best describe what really defies description. So it's meant metaphorically. Hence, they attribute to them only the original meaning from which the other meaning is derived. And that's another mistake. And the third is others are I'm not even sure how to pronounce this, amphibolous or amphibolous terms, which in the Hebrew is misupakim, which means that you're not sure whether it's category 1 or category 2. Is it mishtatef or is it mush'al? Is it something that has dual meanings, or is it a metaphorical term? It could be both, so that at times they are believed to be univocal and at other times equivocal. It is not the purpose of this treatise to make its totality understandable to the vulgar or to beginners in speculation, nor to teach those who have not engaged in any study other than the science of the law, I mean the legalistic study of the law. So the Rambam says, first of all, if you're reading this, let me tell you if this book is meant for you or not. If you're vulgar, how many people think they're vulgar?
It means
right?
common, doesn't it?
It means common. It means coarse. It just means unlettered. If you're not well educated in areas of philosophy, this book is not for you. And even if you're a great Talmud Chacham, because you're well versed in the law, in the science of the law, meaning you know halacha, you are a baki in Shas and Poskim. Sorry, this book is not for you. It's not for you because you are an expert in one area of Torah, but you don't have the expertise necessary for this book. So for the purpose of this treatise and of all those like it, is the science of law in its true sense. The science of law in its true sense. In other words, and the underpinnings, the philosophical underpinnings of the Torah. Or rather, its purpose is to give indications. Now, you're going to see the Ephodi, one of the Meforshim on the Rambam, on the Moreh Nevukhim, says that the Rambam is now going to list 7 things that you must have, 7 prerequisites in your personality or your mentality that you must have in order to be the right person for this book. Okay? So number 1 is a religious man, meaning that you have to be frum. I want you to be a frum person. You can't just be a friar. Yeah? Number 2, and for whom the validity of our law has become established in his soul. You believe in Torah. It's not that you're questioning the validity of Torah min hashamayim. That's not the issue. This is not to help resolve your doubts about apostasy or about atheism. That's not what this book is about. You believe in Torah min hashamayim. Number 3, and you have become actual in his belief, such a man being perfect in his religion and character. So what that means is, so that you have a refined character based upon your observance of the Torah. You've become actual in your belief. In other words, you walk the walk and you talk. Not you don't only talk the talk, but you walk the walk as well. Number 4, having studied the sciences of the philosophers and come to know what they signify. You have studied philosophy. So you understand the score. You've studied Al-Farabi, you've studied Avicenna, you've studied the Aristotelian Arabic texts, so you know what we're going to be talking about. Number 5, the human intellect, having drawn him on and led him to dwell within its province, meaning that you are drawn by your intellect, and you're sort of intellectually curious, and you've become stimulated by your studies of both Torah and philosophy. And number 6, he must have felt distressed by the externals of the law. What that means is that you've noticed that the simple pshat of the Torah, both Torah shebichtav and Torah sheba'al peh, does not reconcile itself easily with things that you've studied within philosophy. We see tremendous conflict. And number 7, by the meanings of the above-mentioned equivocal, derivative, or amphibolous terms, as he continued to understand them by himself or was made to understand them by others. In particular, you are disturbed by some of the terminology of the Torah, which cannot be reconciled with what you understand of what the philosophers say about metaphysics and physics. And so you are truly, truly confused. The Ephodi says the reason why the Rambam lists these 7 is that sort of like you are the Kohen Gadol, who has the 7 big day kahuna, the 7 priestly vestments of intellect. You've come to an advanced point in your life. You're a Talmud Chacham, you know Shas and Poskim, but you've also studied philosophy, and you've come to this point in your life where you have irreconcilable differences that cannot, and you just don't know where to go. Yes, Benjamin.
That couldn't be the student's position. Yosef, the young guy, he wasn't it's contradicting himself.
No, the Rambam says that this fellow Yosef was a brilliant scholar.
At that young age.
even at that young age. Well, we don't know how young he was, but, he was very well educated, yeah.
I assume that the Rambam is saying that all 7 of these criteria have to be met.
Yeah, in order for you to be ready to learn this book.
Yeah, because they go in ascending order. So for 1 and 2, even the vulgar, so to speak,
Yeah.
could have conformed.
That's
to 1
right,
and 2.
exactly.
How do 1 and 2 differ from each other? Being religious and being,
So you're religious, and you believe in Torah min hashamayim.
but isn't that one and the same?
No, there are plenty of religious people who don't believe in Torah min
So you mean
hashamayim.
spiritual? Like, is that what religious, how do you define religious then?
No, so he practices Judaism. Comes to shul every Shabbos, davens, puts on tefillin.
So halachic.
Yeah, halachic. He's a halachic person. Yeah. The Meforshim also point out that one of the main objectives that the Rambam has is to remove corporeality from God. And a lot of the terminology that you find in Tanakh, especially, seems to ascribe some level of corporeality or physical aspects to the Ribbono Shel Olam. And therefore the Rambam has to disabuse us of that notion, because philosophy, which for Rambam is supreme in helping us understand Hashem, removes any sense of corporeality from God, especially Aristotelian philosophy, like we talked about this distinction between matter and form. God must be pure form for an Aristotelian, and so therefore he must be devoid of any corporeality or physicality.
Is that why we don't sing Ani Mizmorot here?
Why? Oh, why? Because there's some...
Allusions
it's
to
filled
God
with,
having dark hair and, physical.
I don't think that's a good question. I don't think that's the reason. I think the reason is because, at least the reason that I've heard is